Welcome to this Cimatron webinar. Today's topic is clearance and vents. We're going to look at creating some clearance using solids and a strategy for creating slot vents, and then utilizing the runner command to make a periphery vent. My name is Michael. I work in tech support at Cimatron. Please put any questions in the chat and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. What I have here is a typical 1+1 mold layout. And before we get into creating the clearance and the vents for this project, we'll have a look at my parting assembly. You can see that I have the work parts and the parting surface part. Parting attributes have been assigned to it. Okay. And then if we take a look at the top of the list, I have a cavity parting line skin. I also have a core parting line skin. They were created using Cut Active, which does an import and stitch to create that skin. And our purpose to having these two parts is to eliminate or minimize any modeling to be done in the core and cavity blocks. One thing for having two of them, the cavity and the core, the rads are normally different from one side to the other, so they clear one another. And you have lifter pockets that may go into the core side. Inserts could be in core and cavity sides, but you can do all these features or modeling inside these skins and then use the skins to cut the core and the cavity block. If you put those modeling features into the core and cavity block, what it does is causes regeneration to take longer, particularly if you're doing stitches and you have multiple stitches in a core and cavity block. It really becomes noticeable when you edit, move a screw, remove a screw. It takes longer to regenerate through those. Looking at my layout, I have a rectangle that represents the block, and the length and width is tied to the setup table. My parting surface part, if you take a look at it, is bigger than my block size by 1/8 per side. So when I sweep these, I reference the endpoint plus 1/8. And this will help me down the road when I go to cut my core and cavity blocks. You can also see that I have a lock part, I have a vent part, and I have a clearance part. Again, going to build stuff within these and then use this geometry to cut my two skins. Before I get into creating the clearance, I'd like to create a curve around each part that represents the periphery of it, and that I can utilize in some of these other parts, and for ease of picking just one curve rather than making a composite all the way around the part. To do this, I'll use Object Silhouette. So I pick the part. I'm going to change the tolerance up a bit to 10 thou rather than, I don't need a perfect curve, I just want a good representation. I just want the outer edge, and now I'm going by project, and I'm going to pick a plane or a planar face. It'll always come up with this about looser tolerance and that. I think 10 thou's loose enough and accurate enough for what we're going to use it for. I'll do the same thing to the right hand part. Make sure I pick outer, pick a plane or a planar face. I can now use that curve to help in my clearance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to offset this curve. And then this new curve is going to represent what my seal off width will be. If you take a look at my parting surface part, you can see that I'm at about 1.125 inches. I always go a little bit bigger. It eliminates any edge and face issue when I go to cut later. So just being a little bit bigger and not ending up on this edge later is a good habit to have, and will help the cuts work a lot cleaner and with less issues. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing to the other part. Okay. So now I can make my clearance part active. I'm going to hide these two guys. And again, I usually keep these couple curves in the work part so it's easy to turn them on and off to get them out of the way. I'm going to go to Sketcher, middle button, rectangle. Okay, the size I'm not worried about because these dimensions I'm going to tie to my setup table. Plus 0.1, so again a little bit bigger than my core and cavity block. Plus 0.1. Now I'd like to add geometry and grab these two curves. Turn these guys off, get it out of the way. In the middle here, I know I'm going to have a runner, so I don't need the clearance to go all through there. I'd like some seal off across there for the runner. Do that. I'll add some rads just to clean it up. All these little points here and that, I could get rid of all these little segments and make one curve. Sometimes I will go around and clean up this geometry. What ends up happening when I extrude it, it's going to make little slivers, and we can take a look at those in a minute. It's usually the biggest cause of extend object offset. Like I said, we'll take a look in a minute at where that affects you. Then extrude, and I make sure I go through the part, all the part and parting line. Some people will have clearance on core side, some on the cavity. A lot of times the part dictates it. And then there's other people that'll clear both halves. I'm going to clear both halves just to go through it. So again, I extruded this. I'm far enough past on both sides. I'm going to solid divide object. And I now have two separate objects there. Hide that. I'm going to hide one of these. I'll go to a side view and I will do a solid extend object. If my parting line was very flat, I could just use move linear and move this up the distance for my clearance. As soon as you have contouring and 10, 15 degree seal offs, the move won't work. It won't give you a nice consistent clearance. So extend object in this case is going to give me a nice consistent offset or clearance all the way around. So I'm going to pick the faces. I'm going to change the color of it to my clearance color. I can do the hide show toggle. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Again, I'm going to go through and make sure all my faces are selected. And I'll say OK. So here's all those little faces that we were talking about in Sketcher. Again, these can cause issues when you do the extend object and for failures. And if I had little slivers on top here, it could give me issues over. So whether I clean it up in Sketcher or I use remove and extend here, I clean those up and get a positive result when I use extend object. But that's typically a couple little issues that causes the failures. Okay, we're going to cut the clearance into the core skin. So I can pick that, pick this. Now when you're dealing with a skin, inside and outside is a little bit ambiguous. One side has to be inside, one side's got to be outside. And it's being able to recognize before I say OK. Otherwise I have to do an edit feature and do this next step. So right now I can see I got double faces on the outside. Not the result I want, so I say invert active object. It'll now give me kind of flip the inside and outside of the skin. And now I can see that the double faces or the green shows up on this side. That is what I want. Okay, and if I take a look now, you can see that my clearance is all cut in. Now at this point that my clearance is cut in, I will turn on my locks. Because I've added clearance, I need to make sure that these are coming out correctly. They're not. I'm going to edit this, bump this guy a little bit, make sure that it goes through, and now I can do a solid cut. Again, you see the greens down there, invert. Now it's up top. Turn this off. Let's add our rounds. Bump that up. And the male ones will do 1/2 inch. Again, do it to your standards, obviously. I'll pick the bottoms. And at one time when it didn't chain all the way around, it was a guaranteed failure for round. Again, that's improved with every version. And now, the majority of the time, it will create that round. Let's pick this color filter, make that. Turn that color filter back off. Go to the cavity side. Actually, clearance will flip. Do the solid cut. Turn this guy off. You can see our clearance is here. Turn the locks on. Let's do a round. Going to want that one to be a little smaller than the other one. It's the female. And I want that to be 3/8. And the top ones. Okay, again, pick the color. Here we go, change that back before we forget. And there's our clearance on the core and cavity skins. Next, we're going to look at creating vents. The first vents we're going to do are the spot ones that go all the way around the part. Again, we're going to go back to our work part here, except this time I have vents active. And I'm going to create the offset curve. I want to make it 100 thou away from the part. And I'm going to pick this curve and say OK. Because I had the vent part active, that curve was created inside of the vent part. I can go to Sketcher. I'm going to add reference. Going to add my rectangle. Again, whatever size you use. We'll add a constraint. And we can say OK. Going to extrude it. Again, I'm making sure I'm going through because of the contouring of the part and everything. Turn this guy off. We're going to use edit, copy along a curve. Going to pick this curve. Instead of interval, we're going to go distance. Most people have a specific spacing. I'm going by reference point. I'm going to flip him. And I'm just going to keep increasing the number of them. I'm going to remove the original. Okay, so I have the vents laid out. I'll bring up the cavity parting line, and now I will eliminate ones that I don't feel I need because of where they're located, how close they are to the runner and gate. I am going to use the parting surface part to cut these and go solid cut. Turn off extend. It failed with extend on. A lot of times this will have it work successful. Okay, and I flip that. Make sure I have the right side. Okay, I think we're good. Save or okay it. Turn these guys off. Again, we'll use the extend object. It's only picking one object at a time, so we'll do a quick merge. Now let's go back to extend object, 30 thou. Again, because it's offsetting, there could be a couple faces it doesn't like or causing a problem. We'll take a look right there. So we're going to do a move and extend. Again with the extend object. Okay, same thing. We remove and extend. remove and extend. So, and these things happen. A lot of it's just math or the geometry. Work through it, a couple extra picks. Okay, so it's extended. Again, it took us a few areas we had to take care of. But again, it worked out. Faces, we'll color these for our vent color. Turn on the cavity part, solid cut. Cut U by U. Make sure I'm going to get the result I want. Yes. Turn off the vents. We'll roll this over. And you can see we've got our vents going all the way around the part. Okay, so that's how the method of creating slot vents. Now we're going to look at creating a periphery vent or a channel vent. So let's hide and get this orientated again. Okay, so one thing I have to do, because I'm going to use the runner command, is I'm going to go here to mold design, runner bodies, and it creates the runner part for me. Okay, so the curve and geometry has to be within the runner part. I'm now going to turn on the left-hand part, and I'm going to offset this curve. And I'm going to use like a 1/4-inch ball for my channel. So I want it to be 100th away. So 0.225 would be about right. Okay, I'm now going to project that onto the cavity, or sorry, the core parting line skin. Okay, so I have my curve. I am going to turn this off, and I'm going to hide the original curve. Now, I don't need the channel vent to go all the way through where the runner is, so I'm going to remove geometry. And now I'm going to go to Runner. I'm going to use this one because I don't want an undercut. The angle, just enough so it's not backdrafted. And the round to be that. Okay, so it's not giving me any results. I'm going to go to wireframe, approximate lines in an arc, or lines and arcs. I'm going to pick this curve. I'm going to give it a minimum radius, remove the original. Let's remove this geometry. We're going to go back into runner bodies. We're going to pick this. Okay, so I get a result, but you can see here that's not exactly what I want. Let's change this to normal to curve. Now the failure originally, sometimes the geometry of that curve, there's something about it. By going into wireframe approximate to arcs and lines, it simplifies or cleans up that curve. And now going into the runner command, I get a result that's a lot better, a lot cleaner than previously. Even originally, if it would have came up with partial sections, I would still went into approximate to arcs and lines, cleaned up that curve, and then came in and reran it. So some math going on with this guy. And now if I take a look here, you can see that that's a lot better result. I will say okay to that. Again, I'm going to change the color of it. And now I can turn on the core, do my solid cut. I'm going to invert the active object. I've had to do it consistently on the core. Say OK. And now you can see that you have a channel running all the way around, staying 100 thou away. Again, I believe the critical step for that one was the approximate the arcs and lines that simplified that curve and cleaned it up and allowed us to make the runner over that complex surfacing. Okay. Well, that wraps up our webinar for today. You can visit our website at www.cimatron.com. If you're in North America, you can contact us at support-us@cimatron.com. And if you'd like to contact us by phone, you can reach us at 877-596-9700, extension 1.